I still deliver to this day. This year it was 52 handwritten gifts to my local clients. And it is such a great touch point. I put them together myself. I write individual cards for them. And a lot of them, they look forward to having me come over. They invite me in. A lot of the deliveries take a really long time. In fact, sometimes as I'm thinking about the second week of December, I'm like, why do I still do this? Because just the idea of driving, so long of a distance is kind of overwhelming. It's something I'm really honest about. You can love your job and be passionate about it and be exhausted by it all at the same time. I think that's a real thing. I think people think burnout means you're like done. Will somebody do it as well as I will? Will they communicate my message as well? Will they have the same voice that I do to my clients? Will my clients still feel the same consistency in the process and the communication with somebody else?
100%. It's always about level setting expectations. I mean, that's one thing you and I first talked about was like the level of professionalism. Like the industry, the professionals are going to be the ones who thrive. I am so excited to have Christy here. Okay, so you have been in the business. You are a veteran to the real estate business. And one thing I love the most about your story is like your commitment to your client. I want to talk about that today. So where are you at? What market do you serve? How long have you been in the industry?
Yeah, Christy Jenkins. I live in Sammamish. The large majority of my business is kind of in the 20-mile radius surrounding Sammamish. So Bellevue, Kirkland, the whole east side, Snoqualmie Valley. I do have a lot of business kind of up in the Lake Stevens area, and I've done a lot of business down in the south end, like Maple Valley Federal Way too. And then of course over in Seattle, my home, the place that I have raised my kids, and we've been in this house for 21 years and I've been at this business for 22, is in Sammamish. So that is definitely what I consider kind of my home territory and where I'm growing the most of my business.
Were you also born and raised in Washington?
No, I was raised in Washington. I was born in Southern California. My folks moved up here when I was 5 years old. We still had family down in California. We would do the old school traditional jump in the van and make the road trip down to Southern California every summer and every holiday. And I swear after I used to get car sick, and after doing that for so many years, I was like, I will never, as an adult, I will never force my kids to do long road trips like my parents did, because it was great when we got there, but miserable getting down there. But that was, we came up here when I was 5. And so most all of my memories growing up, in fact, my kids went to the same middle school that I went to, different high schools. A new high school had been established since I had gone here, but my kids went to Pine Lake Middle School, had a couple of the same teachers that I had way back in the day. And it was kind of fun to see them go through the same process and be so close to the area I grew up in.
I love that. What high school did you go to?
I went to Issaquah.
Okay, but so there's now like up, and that wasn't there back then.
Issaquah was. Now there's Skyline.
Yeah, Skyline.
So Skyline is up on the plateau along with Eastlake. Neither of those high schools were there when I went to high school. So we all went to Issaquah. But now my girls ended up going to Skyline because that was where the boundary line was for them.
And they have a great football team.
Yeah.
Isn't it a football team? Yeah. So like, I mean, I don't have kids, but I know that about Skyline.
All you have to do is watch King 5, the Friday night reports. Exactly.
Share your journey in real estate. You produce a lot. I mean, you sell a lot. And this year, when we were talking, you're like, it's not that much compared to what I've done, which is, I get that. But like, real estate agents aren't selling any houses right now, and you're still selling a lot of houses. So share your journey with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody is, so many of us real estate agents are type A, very diligent, want, things done a certain way and have a process and have goals and charts and graphs and, check boxes. And I certainly had some expectations for this year, and the market didn't exactly, help with some of those. But I have built my business. I started 22 years ago. I was with my mom. So you and I have a commonality there. My mom had just started in the business. She owned a daycare for the entire time I was growing up. So had a ton of kids in our house always. And I think that real estate for my mom was a great step out of daycare and all of the pressure. I mean, she was up at 5, had kids at our house at 6 a.m. A lot of them didn't go home until after dinner. She would serve some of these kids 3 meals a day. I mean, it truly was like a home-based daycare and preschool. And she loved these kids like they were her own. She is probably the most hospitable person that I know. So I think in that regard, the transition into real estate and the hospitality and customer service side of that was really in her wheelhouse. She doesn't love to drive or navigate or a lot of those things. So there's pieces of it that didn't necessarily fit, but she joined up with Quadrant on a team at Redmond Ridge when they were first selling homes up on Redmond Ridge. Yeah. Kind of fell in love with the interaction with people and soon went out on her own and did really, really well. And I joined her as her licensed assistant right after after I had my first daughter. I had been working in a gaming company at Nintendo. I did marketing and corporate communications. And so but I was pre-law in college. And so I think the idea of contracts and negotiations combined with marketing and, PR and all of that was a natural fit with my mom because I had more of the objective, knowledge and information about how this job could be done and how we could create systems and processes and, follow up and all of that, where she was very hands-on, hand holding, loved the interaction with the people, but not as good at the process side of things. So we had a great partnership for many years until she retired in 2017. And then I helped them move out of the family home that I grew up in the month before COVID hit, moved them into an assisted living or a retirement community, 55 and over community, Providence Point here in Issaquah, sold their house. And she hasn't done any business since and has kind of followed some other passions. But that was really, for me, 2017 was kind of a pivot year for me because I had done real estate because I needed to and I needed the job and, didn't really understand how it was going to fit into my passions or my legacy or what that was going to look like in the future until that time.
I want to know, because you do most of your business is sphere marketing and referrals and repeat business at this point. So I know there's so many people who have, here's an example. Yesterday, I was on a call. I did a coaching call. I had 7 or 8 agents on there and there were only one who'd been in business for less than 20 years. Only one.
Wow.
Yeah, which is kind of fascinating, kind of interesting. I work with agents of all, usually not brand new agents, but usually agents who are within that 5 to 10 year range. And honestly, a lot of agents who've been in the business for 20 plus years. So it's kind of interesting. I'll figure that out.
Yeah.
My question is more even in the people who are been in the business for that long, there's a lot out there who don't work off repeat and referral business, even after 20 years in the business, right? They still work on Zillow leads, they work on Redfin leads, or they work on whatever other lead sources out there. So what steps have you taken over the years to build your business to where it is today?
That's a good question. And I think because I started out so organically, you get used to a process and whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, it feels comfortable. It feels natural. There was no Instagram, social media, any of that back when we started. And so doing it organically was really, unless you're going to post newspaper ads or, sit in an office and be available for, office walk-ins and handle phone calls and stuff, there is no other way to do it. And so I think when my mom and I started and we really started growing it organically, that just felt natural to keep going with that process. And I think that it worked really well because neither one of us, we were both married, our spouses both had full-time jobs. So we weren't necessarily trying to build and grow a huge business. We built a full-time business with 2 part-time people because together the 2 of us were a full-time team, but we weren't trying to excel and grow something that was huge or, we weren't thinking about our legacy or what that would look like in the years from now. We were just trying to survive. And we knew that the income that we were producing was supplementing what we needed to take care of the extra stuff that we wanted and needed. And it was a different time, and that's why a lot of times when people ask, if you could start all over and do it all over again, would you? Or what would you do differently? And it's that was such a different time. I mean, we really were, it was a very different market and the expectations of a real estate agent and the things that we had to do were so different that I can't even imagine knowing what I know now and having the experience, how I would go back as a new, younger agent in that particular market and do it differently. So I think, the growth over time, because it was slower, made for something that was really, really solid and deep. And that's what I lean into. And that's what I, lean back on. I was just, before we popped on this, I still deliver to this day. This year it was 52 hand-created handwritten gifts to my local clients. And it is such a great touch point. I put them together myself. I write individual cards for them. And a lot of them, they look forward to having me come over. They invite me in. So a lot of the deliveries take a really long time. In fact, sometimes as I'm thinking about the second week of December, I'm like, why do I still do this? Because just the idea of driving, so long of a distance is kind of overwhelming. But all of this goes back to your question, of the longevity and what I do and relationship building. And that is because I love when they invite me in. I love having tea or coffee or a glass of wine and seeing what they've done to the house or, hearing about their kids who were, little when I helped them move into this, upsizing house and now they're graduating from high school. And it's just a really special time for me to connect back in a really authentic way with those clients that I built such a strong bond with. So it's one of my favorite parts of the holiday season.
My first year in the business, I did a pie party. It's so funny because kind of mean to each other sometimes in this industry. Like we kind of like pick on each other for everyone doing a pie party, but I'm like, people do it because it works, right? So success leaves clues. So like, why would you not do something that works for other people, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it works for you too. Why would you not do it?
Yeah.
I always thought it was really funny how like people would just be like making fun of all the real estate agents doing pie parties.
You're not necessarily doing it to earn new business. You're doing it to solidify the referrals you're going to get from the people who already trust you. And I think that's a huge difference. When you're talking about ROI for some of these activities and events and stuff that you're doing, you have to remember what the goal is. The goal is not to earn new business. The goal is to solidify the referrals from the people who already have invested in you, who already trust you, who already talk to their friends about you, who already know how much you care, and they simply want to share that with other people. It's just another great reminder of your aftercare service after the transaction closes.
What's the best event you've ever done for your client?
I don't do a lot of partnered with some colleagues of mine. And I felt like that was such a great way to do it because we were able to do such a bigger scale and elevate it so much more because we did it together. We did this ice skating party and hot cocoa and rented out this was just last holiday season, actually, rented out an ice skating rink and invited clients there. And it was fun because they all got to see each other, interact with each other. And we got to share in the cost and the load and the responsibility. Because sometimes as your business grows and you're thinking about what does this look like, and you don't want to do something that's going to fall flat or that you invest a ton of time and money and energy into and then not have it be on the right day or not have people show up. Or I think those big events are really hard to pull off by yourself. And that's why I love so much more the individual stuff that I do because it lets me connect with each individual client in such a different way than a big event. So that's more kind of in line with my business. Yeah.
I loved events. I love them. Like my favorite one that I ever did was I combined it with a community party. So I rented out a brewery and I kind of capitalized on what they already had, and not a full brewery, just like part of it. And I capitalized on the fact that they already had a food truck there. They already had a artist coming in. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to rent out these versions and sell and get tickets. And so I had like so many clients come to that, group beer tickets. That's like the easy stuff. But to your point, like if I had to coordinate all of that myself, other than just being like, give me my spot and then I'll invite people.
It's overwhelming. I mean, event planning, I mean, it's kind of like a lot of the other pieces of our job. You know, you go, how much of my time and energy gets devoted into this one little piece? Because there are so many different hats that we wear. To think about spending, X number of hours in one direction, what does that pull you away from? And, is that worth it in the end? Because those things really do take a lot of time and energy.
Okay, so 22 years in the business. Yeah. And usually by this time, there's some sort of like you've evolved. So you don't have a team. I know that. But you do have like a mentor. You do mentor other agents. You do that kind of side of your business. So how did you kind of evolve into that? And when did you make that decision?
I think it came from just realizing that instead of just having a job, I could make a career out of this. And it was something that I truly enjoyed, even though I kind of fell into it in a different way. I realized how passionate I was about it. And I knew that what changed for me is when I realized I could show my kids that you can be a present parent and a successful business owner and make money all at the same time. And that to me was kind of a foreign concept. I had met so many women at that time who had either given up careers to stay at home with their kids or who were staying at home with their kids, but who were kind of resentful that they weren't still in the workforce, even though they didn't want to admit that because that was so faux pas. But I really wanted to show my girls that you can do anything. If you're organized and you're passionate and you've got the skills and you've got the resources, and you've got the tools, you can do it all. That's a legacy I wanted to leave down to them as they were growing up and thinking about what they wanted to do when they grew up. I would take them with me on tour sometimes to remove lock boxes, to pick up signs and flyers and, all of that stuff so that they would have a little bit of an idea of what I did because I really wanted them to be proud of me as they became adults. And I really wanted to see them to see how hard I had worked to provide this legacy of a business that, was one of the reasons we were able to do what we were able to do. We put both of the girls through college without any debt. We've supported them in a lot of other ways. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't figured out how to. And I was, PTA mom. I was the part, speaking of events, I was the party mom for almost all of their classes in elementary school and all throughout and, high school graduation stuff. And I love that part of it. And I always wanted to be be the one who could go on field trips and who could go into the classroom when it was needed. And we hosted so many of their events at our house and put on stuff here. And I wanted to be able to do that. And real estate at that time afforded me that flexibility that I really could feel like I could be a great mom to them and be present and yet still build a business.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And when you're talking about growing up and riding around in a car with you to take out lock boxes, I don't know if that reminds you of growing up with a mom in the industry, but that reminds me of growing up with a mom in the industry when I would ride around. However, it was a different time. So when my mom was driving around as I was younger, like she wasn't removing lock boxes. She was having me take the Thomas Brothers map and navigate through the streets to figure out how to get there. So it's just kind of cool. When you were talking about your daughters, doing that growing up, I started thinking, it kind of made me think, I was like, I remember what was that like, watching my mom, being so proud of her.
Yeah, my mom, because she started much later in life, that was kind of her second gig. I was already an adult by the time she started in real estate. I didn't really grow up with, a mom doing it, but I did learn a lot of things from her in terms of, how I could teach and train and how real estate did kind of mimic life and parenting in a lot of ways. The kind of conversations that we have to have with clients and how consistent and, gentle in some ways and forceful in other ways, and how we have to hold the line and, hold some boundaries and parameters. There's a lot of parenting stuff involved in real estate professionals these days. And, wearing a lot of hats and multitasking certainly transitioned that into my professional career too.
Yeah. Totally. So do you have a niche? So I know that your client niche, but let's talk about kind of the mentorship side of your business, right? So do you have a niche of agent you like to work with?
I think that my tools and skills are best matched with agents who have been in it for long enough that they understand what's required. They know how to write a contract. They know what's expected. They've heard all of the, kind of the feeding into them by mentors and what they're supposed to do. And they've watched all the videos and training, and they kind of have an idea of what this job looks like, but they don't truly know how to take care of clients from start to finish and beyond. I think in terms of mentoring and training, that 2 to 5 year time frame is the best for me because they're still malleable. They still want to grow. There's still that passion and excitement about it, but a lot of times there's not the organization or the, the hand holding and the mentorship that comes with some established agents who kind of already have a process and don't really want to change it, just want you to help them succeed. So I think there's that. And just, a willingness, a desire to help people. I think that's the most important thing that I've learned through mentoring new agents is you have to think about this job as a long-term career. If you're thinking about it as a transactionally, those aren't the kind of people I want to work with. I want to work with people who have a heart for serving other people first and foremost. Unreasonable Hospitality is by far my favorite book. I read it a couple of times, and I think having a mom who was so hospitable and then working in the restaurant industry, it really resonates with me of how you take care of people, how you talk to them, how you anticipate their needs, how you proactively figure out what the next steps in the process are. And so I think working with people who have that same mentality is just kind of the key as far as mentorship.
Unreasonable Hospitality is a fantastic book. Will Guidara was a keynote speaker for our conference last year. And he's pretty awesome. I read the book before he was there as a keynote. Yeah. And I just loved it. I was like, man, I went to my husband. I was like, we need to set up one day every month where we get all dressed up and go out to a really fancy dinner. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, where did that come from? I'm like, this book, Unreasonable Hospitality. Yeah. They talk about the 5-star restaurants and what makes them unique. And,
exactly.
It's so relatable in what we do. Okay. So I know that when we were talking the first time, you were really awesome and open about the thing that a lot of agents experience. And that is we love what we do. A minute ago, you were just like, I just love, my clients and we love it, right? this is a relationship business. But I think a lot of times people don't get to see the other side of that, the flip side of that, which is burnout and feeling like I don't have time for anything. I don't, so can you share a little bit more about that side of the?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I'm really honest about. You can love your job and be passionate about it and be exhausted by it all at the same time. I think that's a real thing. I think people think burnout means you're done. And it doesn't. It just means you realize that you need to do it differently. And I think we wear so many more hats now as real estate professionals. If you're doing it right and you're doing it well, we wear so many more hats than what was expected of this job as a whole 22 years ago. I kind of liken in it too. If I, with as organized and structured as I am having a hard time figuring out where to put my time and my energy and where it's best served and where it's best used and how to say no to things, if I'm having a hard time with that, there's got to be 95% of the rest of the people who are having a hard time with that too, because I am incredibly organized. Like I said, I'm very type A. I'm kind of on the OCD, side of things, where if I'm not getting it done and I'm not getting it done 100%, I am disappointed enough in myself. I don't need anyone else to tell me that I didn't do it right. Let's fix it. Let's figure out how to do it better and move on. But if I'm burnt out because I don't know how to structure my time and what systems I need in place, I think that's a really good sign that I am not alone. And in talking about it, it certainly has, resonated with a lot of people. They're, between contract and taking clients on tours and, open houses, those are the traditional things that we've always, done. That's always been expected. There's kind of some, long-term tasks that are involved in this job that we still do. But social media content, speaking opportunities, reviewing stuff from other people that they ask you to help with if you're in a leadership position, website creation and figuring out blog posts, how do you get your voice out there, not just in social media, but how are you attracting other people to you, and all of this client management stuff that we're doing, your CRM systems and updating that and keeping in touch with everybody. It is just the amount of things that we need to do is overwhelming. And there's definitely a time. And I think it's because when my kids moved out of the house and I became an empty nester, I knew I had a lot more time to devote to this. And so I dug in. I mean, deep dive, head first. Let's figure out what this next stage of my career looks like. Because like I said before, I really want to leave a legacy to my kids. And that means investing hard into this and preparing for our future and retirement. And we've got some long-term goals that take some, pretty substantial amounts of money that we want to do. And I want to be able to provide for that. I want a life after, real estate that I can actually relax and enjoy. But I can't do it if I'm completely burning myself out and feeling the physical, mental, emotional effects of what that was doing on me. And so I think that became, really real. And I reached out and, sought out some mentorship myself and sought out other people who I could relate to, and a group and a collaborative, office where I could have some real conversations about what that looked like and we could support each other in that.
Yeah. I think there's 3 million registered agents or registered realtors with NAR in the US, and 87% of them have report burnout in the first 3 years. The fact is, and I look at it like this. Real estate there's so much power in what we do. The problem with it is there's not one way to do it. And you go, coming from corporate America, because my career before here was corporate America, it was one way to do it.
Yeah.
And, you come into real estate and it's a very low barrier for entry, maybe $1,000 these days to get your license. I don't know, something like that. Yeah. You get your license and all of a sudden you have access to billions of dollars in inventory. Yeah. It's kind of if you think about the scope of what's involved in that, just because you have access to it doesn't mean you get to sell it, right? You still have to work really hard. Right. We're putting these people, a lot of times, second or third career people into these roles where all of a sudden, like you said, they have to be a marketer and an operator and a CEO and a strategist and a creator and a graphic designer and a content writer. It's just all these things. And it's the problem I see is that there's not enough space out there or enough coaching out there or teaching out there on how to actually live in your genius zone and how to really live, thrive in that place. Makes you feel burnout's going to happen. I burn out by going to an event. I'm okay, I'm burnt out. I need to go back, right? I'm done. Burnout happens, but it doesn't have to be a permanent state of mind.
The great thing about this job is that it does evolve so much. I mean, every day is different. Every year is different. All the clients that you meet are different. Their needs are different. I mean, unless you're just really working purely in a very niche space, on a new construction, site for a year at a time. I think one of the beauties of this job is that every day is different. And so it's easy to stay excited about it because you get new challenges and new clients and new opportunities all the time. And so I think if you can figure out how to support your business side of things, that can be, a beautiful collaboration for a lot of people in this job. Yeah. But I think, like you said, you wear so many hats, and you said it much more eloquently than I did in terms of all the things that we do. But it does, unless you have a team who is doing all the pieces of that you're not as good at or that takes you a long time. And I think that's what's been hard about, bringing a team member on. I know that I am capable and I am good at all of these things and these tasks. So figuring out what I'm willing to and want to let go of has been a big hurdle of mine because I can and I should be doing a lot of these things that I'm already doing. Will somebody do it as well as I will? Will they communicate my message as well? Will they have the same voice that I do to my clients? Will my clients still feel the same consistency in the process and the communication with somebody else, no matter what piece of that they take on? And so I've kind of, baby steps. I had a transaction coordinator who I hired to do a lot of the transaction side of things. And that was challenge too. She had her processes and I hate these stock emails that you send out. They don't sound like me. That's not how my clients usually get communicated with. And I had to go through a transition with her of figuring out how we could work together to customize her process and her emails to fit my voice and my clients' needs. And then I hired a VA and it took at least 6 months. We're still, working on things, and it's been a year and a half, almost 2 years that I've had her with me, but figuring out how to teach and train somebody to really capture your voice and the way that you're doing things is really hard. And when you are building just a small team, I think you look at that a little bit differently than if you're trying to grow something really big and substantial.
Yeah, I was there too. I tried building, got my managing broker's license. I was like, I'm going to be a managing broker. And God, I went and got a team of 5. It was about how big I got it till I was like, okay, I'm done with this. And so I know I can relate to that. But I will say, like, the one thing that I've learned in building, because now I have a person who does the ops for me, a person who writes all my content for me now too, which is like, extremely right. Like, and that's been a big deal. And I have a person who does my editing for me. So I have all these people. But the one thing I can say that you essentially said was, you have to kind of start when you feel like you're not fully ready. Because when you are fully ready, like right now, you're probably fully ready for more. But the problem is now there's too much. Now it's harder. Like, it's kind of like, think about it, like when a seller waits to sell their house, right? They call you in the spring, but by the winter, they still haven't like cleaned up their front yard or whatever it is, right? It's just like, if you would have just started with one step back in the spring, we could have had it sold and moved on for you. Same thing with hiring a team. It's like the earlier you start, the easier it is. The faster it happens, but it's still not easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's why, too, in thinking, and one of my goals for 2026 is to hire either a licensed assistant or a junior, agent, because I do think that that's an important next step for my business. With the goals that I have and the kind of scaling and kind of balance that I want in my business, it is an important piece that I need to be thinking about. But that's why I went to 3 trusted colleagues who all manage teams and said, I need some help with a structure for a job description. And would you be willing to interview somebody with me? You've got to kind of set up, when you're a solopreneur, you also have to have people that you can count on that can be that extra voice for you, or can give you the ideas, or can give you their layout that you can then customize for yourself too. Because sometimes I think that the overwhelm comes from not having a place to start. We don't need it all done for us all the time, but we do a lot of times need a place to start. We need a framework that allows us to think and go, okay, all right, I can work with this. I can manipulate this. I can put my, stuff in here and have something that's cohesive that you can put out there without starting from scratch.
Yep. So true. So true. Okay, so your goal for 2026 is to bring on some more agents. What else do you have going? You had something else that you're talking about right now too. That's pretty exciting.
Oh, I am so proud and humbled to be hosting an incredible mastermind in January. These are going to be the top agents, the agents who want to understand how to do this business better, more authentically, with less stress, because we are bringing in 4 of the best speakers I have ever sat under. We are bringing in Ryan Coyne, who's the Chief Experience Officer for Ryan Serhant. He's been Ryan Serhant's Chief Technology Officer for the last several years. He has single-handedly transformed AI apps in real estate. And he's going to be talking so much about how we can use AI. Tyler Mount is a branding coach and strategist. He is incredible. He built a big part of Ryan's team and his content management. So behind Ryan Serhant's branding was Tyler. And then Kat Torrey does a ton of authenticity. How do you come across on social media? How do you get this person that you are to fit what comes across on social media to other people? And what does that look like for you? And then Arjun Dhingra is a friend, an incredible financial mind. And the way that he explains, weird, tough concepts like why the cut in the Fed rate doesn't transform into a lower interest rate for the common, buyer. The way that he talks about that and the stuff that he puts out is just incredible. So that is going to be on January 28th. I just feel like, and it's going to be at Sparkman Cellars. We're literally going to have a mastermind in a winery, and we're going to drink wine, and there's going to be a catered lunch, and it's just going to be this afternoon of lunch and learn and really figure out what 2026 looks like for those of us who are growth minded educated, but also who know we need different tools and tips and resources that we may not already have at our disposal to make the most out of 2026. I think it's going to be a huge growth year for those real estate agents, the kind of the cream of the crop to continue to rise, because we're going to have to keep adapting and keep figuring out how to make this job work for us in a different and unique way. And that's sometimes the beauty and the challenge of this job. You have to kind of keep figuring out how to reinvent yourself because there are new things that are thrown at us all the time. But how we manage those and who we have in our corner to help support us is a really big deal. These people are going to be incredible.
That sounds exciting. Oh, yeah. I love it. I love it.
I get excited just thinking about it and talking about it. It's been such a passion project.
Yeah, I love it. We'll make sure to get this posted before that. So let me ask you, because I like to ask every veteran in the business, you know, what do you think what's your prediction for 2026 for the market?
I think that people are going to have settled into what I don't know that there's going to be huge changes. I think that people are just going to settle into this is the new normal and we have to move on with our lives. It's not going to be as life-changing based. Like, you know, I think that people are going to realize we need to move on with our life and our plan and our future. And I think that's going to naturally result in more listings. I have 8 sellers right now who are literally just waiting until after the first of the year to see what happens. And I think they're all going to sell this year, no matter what, because they've kind of held off on doing that. So I think that those who are prepared, who've stayed in touch with their clients, who know their market, who understand their hyper local community, I think those are the ones that are going to continue to do really well. And I think that sellers are going to need to sell and buyers are going to need to buy. And I think putting them together and matchmaking those two things is still going to be a really integral part of what we can do. And if you can speak that language and if you can stay on top of things, I think it's going to be, you know, a really great thing.
Yeah. I've heard that 2026 is going to be the year of the seller, but not in the sense of like, there's going to be a flood of inventory, just more that like sellers are, you know, it's been more buyer friendly over the last couple of years. And I think it's going to still continue to be buyer friendly, but I think sellers are finally going to accept that it's a buyer friendly market.
I agree. And, you know, they have to kind of reset expectations. And, but I think too, there's strength in how we explain that. And there's strength in how we talk about it.
100%.
And that's why we also need to be really, really tuned in to the voices that are speaking the truth and the narrative that really resonates with our clients in our hyper local area, not the national news, not even Washington state news. We are in a hyper local area. And if we can have those realistic conversations with our clients, I think we're going to set them up for success.
100%. It's always about level setting expectations. I mean, that's one thing you and I first talked about was like the level of professionalism, like the industry, the professionals. And that's what you said in 2026. Yeah. The professionals are going to be the ones who thrive.
Yeah.
The professional.
And you said it earlier, and your conversation with Drew Hill just a little bit ago, you know, you talked about this too. The level of entry, the level of real estate agent versus real estate professional is a real distinction.
Yeah.
And those of us who treat this like it is a profession, who treat it like it's a career, there's a different level of expectation in that. And I think clients need to be much more discerning 100%. When they're choosing somebody. You know, there is a vast difference. I saw something on Instagram the other day. It said, you know, thank your barista. She might have more training than your financial advisor. I mean, it applies to real estate agents. I think you know, more. That just happened to be the field that this person was posting it in. But I was like, that is so true. The amount of training and hours that go into that versus what you have to do to sell real estate or help people buy it is pretty overwhelming when you think about it.
Right.
So
but hence burnout. Let's go back to the burnout conversation.
Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I talked to someone else today and he's a land use consultant. His episode will be out shortly too, but he got his master's in real estate. And I was like, I was curious. I was like, you don't have to go to school to be a real estate agent. And he said, no, but if you really want to become a professional, like University of Washington actually offers a master's of real estate, which goes deeper into like the analytical side of real estate, like the things that you don't, the things that like maybe we don't do as brokers, but like, I was like, I can actually see how that could be really beneficial for someone who, you know, you can do a bunch of CE too, of course.
Yeah.
But like, I could see how a master's program would actually really like elevate your level.
Absolutely. And then the flip side of that is it only serves you unless the audience you're serving believes that that's necessary. Right. So how do we change the narrative with the client to expect more, to view that as a benefit to them instead of just like a fun little couple of letters after your name. Like, how do we get buyers and sellers to view that additional degree, that additional information, that additional training as something that's going to impact them? Yeah. And I think until that changes and people expect more and expect a higher level of service and education and training, then I think we're going to have I see that as being kind of a tough sell.
Yeah, I think it all goes back to the way you present the value, the way you tell the story. It's all in storytelling. And it's going to go back to the whole burnout, right? You have to become a lot of people, I wish people would understand when they come into the industry, or if they're in the industry for any period of time, like you have to be the number one skill set I think people need to master is being a storyteller. Like you have to be really good at telling your personal story. And how does that story impact the person that's in front of you right now? Why does it matter? Yeah. And I think that's a big skill set that, we just have the opportunity to teach. Yeah. That's why I teach it. I'm like, there's so much power in storytelling.
It's huge. Yeah. It's huge. And when you're listing a house, how do you tell the story about a house so that somebody walks in and they feel how much love and care has been put into this house, and they can see their story, their journey continuing in their house. Yep. It's just such a different way of looking at things. And just kind of circling back to how we started, we did nothing but put photos a lot of times from, a little camera, our own personal camera. Exactly. Yeah. I remember doing that for a lot of clients back in the day. We didn't have professional photographers. You literally just took pictures and put them up on the MLS and crossed your fingers and, hit activate. And that is so different than what we do today. And the expectation is so much higher. So why hasn't the training and expectation of the clients risen to meet that too? And I think that, the higher we expect of our agents, then the better this is going to be for everybody, because we need to raise the bar.
100%. With that is a great ending. I love that. That's like a Christy slam dunk mic drop right there. I love that. She's like, that's what we're going to do. So Christy, how can my audience find you?
I am all over social media, and my own website is ChristyJenkinsRealEstate.com, and handle is Christy Jenkins Real Estate. So I've made it really easy, really consistent across all platforms. Christy Jenkins Real Estate.
With an I, Christy with an I.
Kristi.
I love it. Love it. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Christy, you have been awesome. I can't wait to see what this event is like on the 28th of January. Yes. Because I will be there. As long as I'm in town, I will be there. And I'm very excited. So thank you so much. And I'll see everyone on the next episode.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Bye.